Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It's Friday night, and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio with your hosts, Anthony Agati.
And me, Lucy Liebfried. Welcome back, Anthony. What a great show we have for you tonight. Our chat room is up and running, so feel free to ask us any questions. And if you lose sound on your player, just refresh your page or log back in. Blog Talk can be a little testy sometimes. You can also send us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com, and be sure to check us out on our Facebook page.
Where can you go to find out when the zombie strip is returned to Chicago's Admiral Theater? Or where's the best beer party to celebrate the coming apocalypse of 2012? How about why Will Ferrell left his haunted trailer on the movie set? Well, our guest tonight is the man you go to for the best in all paranormal pop culture news and stories. Aaron Sagers is well-known journalist, syndicated columnist for media outlets such as CNN, Chicago Tribune, and MSNBC, an amazing published author, and is also the founder and contributor to ParanormalPopCulture.com, a huge website dedicated to all things paranormal in every pop culture category. But recently, Aaron has added to his resume the credentials of host and co-executive producer for a new paranormal news show on the Travel Channel titled Paranormal Paparazzi. The show premiered last Friday, September 28th, and is set for 8 hauntingly freaky episodes this season. Oh, and did I mention Zach Bagans is the executive producer for the show? Lucy and I have been lucky to have investigated with Aaron at some of the well-known haunted locations in the country, like the Stanley Hotel and Eastern State Penitentiary a couple years back. It's an honor to have him on and an honor to have him on our show. Please help me in welcoming the skeptic in chief, Mr. Aaron Sagers, to the show. Hello, Aaron. How are you tonight?
Hi, Anthony. How are you? Thanks so much for such a warm welcome. I appreciate that.
Great.
Welcome to the show, Aaron. It's so good to talk to you again.
You as well, Lucy. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, it's an honor. You know what? I've heard many answers to my first question that I have for you, like, oh, I've lived in haunted houses all my life, and so, or I love to watch scary horror movies as a child. So, my first question, Aaron, is how did you become so involved in the paranormal?
Well, you know, I've been asked that question a lot lately, and I've been thinking about it quite a bit. And, you know, for me, it's sort of a combination of those two examples that you just gave. I didn't really live in a haunted house so much as, some interesting things happened to my family when I was younger, but I don't really know what the deal was with that. I was very young. But I will say that from a very young age, I was always fascinated in ghost stories and, supposedly real ghost stories and tales of monsters and aliens, and I was always consuming those Time Life books, Mysteries of the Unexplained. And in addition to that, I really was lucky enough to grow up in a time where there were a lot of great movies that we may not consider them paranormal movies, but I do, such as Jaws or Raiders of the Lost Ark or E.T., out of the house of Spielberg and Lucas. And then, and yes, I loved horror movies and, was exposed pretty early on to, like, the Universal monster movies and Hammer horror films, in addition to the great movies like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street in the 80s. So, for me, all of that kind of came together, And it was all sort of in the same basket for me, the stories of supposedly real phenomena and then the fictional phenomena. Like, I loved it all equally. I loved it all the same, and that really just it connected with me. So so it's a combination of both of your examples.
Mm-hmm. I think we've all watched those horror movies, and I think, like you said, I mean, they probably have left a lasting impression on all of us, whether we realize it or not. You know what? But my next question. Now, a little birdie told me that you are the creator of the term paranormal pop culture. So how did you come to create this awesome title, and why did you feel the need to give birth to the website paranormalpopculture.com?
Insofar as I know, I am the person that coined that phrase. I've not seen it existing before 2009 when I created it. I'm, as you mentioned in the excellent intro, I am a mainstream journalist. I remain a mainstream journalist. And a few years back, when TV shows such as Ghost Hunters and then Paranormal State and then Ghost Adventures were coming on, because I loved this stuff from an early age, when the shows first started coming out, that really kind of captured the reality TV docudrama investigative show. I just said these are going to be big, and sure enough, they were. And over the next couple of years, I was able to write about them a fair amount with my mainstream jobs in the media. And then it kind of reached a point where, I decided I love this stuff so much that, I want to kind of, instead of just writing about it occasionally whenever my editors would allow me, I wanted to create my own little world. I wanted to create my corner of the Internet where I could talk specifically about paranormal pop culture, not just for people that watch Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures and believe and investigate on their own, but also for the people that just love the movies, the people that, love a good story and love a good scare and, love geeking out about these theories. For me, I remember I was working on a story for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I was at Fort Mifflin. I had actually had a really great ride into Fort Mifflin with John Zaffis, and I was talking to him about all the things that I loved, and was going to work on this story. The Ghost Hunters were having an investigation there, and John was going as well. And I think it came up maybe in the car, I developed it in the car, or maybe it was like the next day, but that was sort of when it all gelled, and I said, you know what, I really want to focus on this and create a space that everybody can gather and just celebrate this stuff, celebrate the comic books, the movies, the stories, the TV shows, and let's create a place where people that love Twilight or Vampire Diaries or Walking Dead or American Horror Story and Ghost Hunters and all of it, we can all kind of come together in this space. And by and large, I think I have, there's always more work to do, but I'm very happy with what we've done so far.
Now, Aaron, how was that transition, though? You went from, sort of straight-laced media journalism to, really jetting into the paranormal. How did that transition affect you, or did it have any effect on possibly your credibility of changing over?
No, because when I write about this stuff, I still very much approach it from a journalistic standpoint. I mean, I think that I have a really great kind of ability to navigate this world, because when I talk about popular culture, I'm talking about the things that, capture our imagination and are part of the zeitgeist and get people talking. And I can talk about it in terms of, you cannot dismiss something like Paranormal Activity because it ends up being such a box office bonanza, or you cannot dismiss The Walking Dead or American Horror Story because the ratings, or Twilight for the same reasons. So when I talk about these things, I talk about the trends, the history, the cultural context. What I do not do is I never really try to tell people whether it's real or not, what to believe or not. And because of that, I think I am able to navigate these waters in a very unique way. I mean, when I give presentations on these things, for instance, I just was at a horror convention and I was talking about curses within popular culture, and I say, here is the story. Here is what makes something like the poltergeist curse so popular and why it captures our imagination, but here's the backstory to it, the things you may not know. And, from all of this, we can define what theories are about curses, but still, it is your decision. Like, you get to decide whether you think it is a curse or not. I'm just saying this is part of the conversation. And as far as the rest of the edition, I mean, I still had to and continue to write to pay the bills, and that includes talking about mainstream things. I just published a story on CNN about Doctor Who, which I love, which is not really paranormal, but you continue to have to work when you start a website or when you do create any endeavor. You hope that it will become the main source of revenue, but you still do other work. And actually, for me, the transition was pretty easy in many ways because I was able to use a lot of my contacts from the day job as far as studios and interview contacts and everything and carry that over to the website. I mean, today on the website I published an interview with Tim Burton. That's the kind of thing that is directly impacted by my reputation in the mainstream journalism world. So for that way, I've actually been incredibly fortunate, and it's one of the reasons I love my job, because I can go play in all these different sandboxes, and it is still my career.
Well, and now that paranormal pop culture has sort of been your baby for a few years, how do you feel pop culture has changed society in the way it views the paranormal?
Well, I give an entire presentation on this, and I go back, pretty far. Actually, I started a couple millennia ago, and popular culture is nothing new. I mean, popular culture is, really just a series of images and ideas that we all sort of recognize and relate to and kind of connect, and it's also sort of a shorthand for communication. So, like, if I say to you, we're going to need a bigger boat, and you automatically recognize that as coming from Jaws, right away we've established a connection with one another. We've established a shortcut, and we exist sort of within the same popular culture together, you and I. And paranormal pop culture, I mean, it is popular culture that allows us to interpret and try to come to an understanding or try to explain the unexplained. And we've always been doing that. You see that in the Bible, which is, not to disrespect it, I mean, certainly it is the foundation for religion, but it is also the most popular piece of pop culture. And you see stories dealing with ghosts and witches and people that have been resurrected, and you see it in Shakespeare. And what's interesting is throughout the ages, let's say with ghosts, throughout the ages, the way we look at and think about ghosts has changed. So there was a time when they were just like you and me. They were, had a physical form. They moved around in armor and interacted and could conduct a battle, to changing to this sort of, insubstantial thing or mist or shadows, So,
right.
And you see that within popular culture. What we kind of think about the ghost, for instance, is then reflected within popular culture, and so it's constantly changing and constantly evolving. I will say right now, what is so intriguing to me is that we are in this phase where all of these elements of the paranormal are popular all at once. Instead of going through a vampire phase or a ghost phase or a zombie phase, we're sort of in an everything phase where we love it all right now, and we want everybody into the pool at once.
So, Aaron, Anthony and I have learned that planchette writing is close to about 1,000 years old since it was first recorded in China. But it wasn't until Hasbro developed a line of board games called Ouija that it became so popular. But also the essence of the spirit of the practice changed its meaning to something negative. Now, do you feel that much of what mainstream is doing to the paranormal could be the reason for its rise in popularity, but also for its possible future downfall?
So do I think that popular culture is contributing to the rise of paranormal and also potentially the downfall of paranormal?
Mm-hmm.
This sort of plays into a conversation that we are constantly having within our society of, is popular culture contributing to this bad thing or that bad thing? It's sort of like, I'm a big fan of The Simpsons, and I love Reverend Lovejoy's wife. Mrs. Lovejoy is frequently saying, won't someone please think of the children? Think of the children. It makes me giggle because, a lot of times we're trying to blame pop culture on things that are happening in our real world. I mean, and unfortunately it happens a lot of times during moments of tragedy, like when there was the Aurora, Colorado shootings, in July, there was the question of, well, what kind of music was this guy listening to, or was the violence in Batman contributing to this somehow? And so I do think that popular culture puts a spotlight on certain things and does make it more popular. So, yes, you see when a movie like Paranormal Activity comes out, it makes people kind of interested in ghosts in a new way. But that's nothing new. That's always been the case. I don't think it'll contribute to the downfall. I think things ebb and flow. We have peaks and valleys of popularity, and if we oversaturate the market with too many movies or TV shows or whatever about Ouija, for instance, eventually it'll get so old that it'll kind of fade again into the shadows and then reemerge in another 10 years or whatever. So I don't think it'll lead to the downfall. I think our fascination with the unexplained in particular is not going away. It may become less popular in the mainstream, but we will always look to the skies and wonder what else is out there. What do we not see that we kind of think might be out there? Or we will always, go into the ocean and kind of think, like, what's swimming below me? What else could be in these waters? Or, that kind of thing is not going to go away no matter what crappy movie comes out.
Mhm. Okay, so you talked about like the ebb and flow of like things becoming popular and not so popular, and this current phase that we're in. Why do you think that paranormal movies and basically the reality TV shows, why are they becoming more and more popular in recent years in this phase?
Well, what I think is, first off, with like Ghost Hunters in 2004, before Ghost Hunters, we did see things like Most Haunted, and that was its own thing, but that was sort of the predecessor to the Ghost Hunter investigative reality show. And one reason that Ghost Hunters worked so well is they really brought to life Ghostbusters. Art imitates life, imitates art, and it's just this constant cycle. And I find it so interesting that when you watch something like Ghostbusters, again, that was like 85, so it took a few years, but, Ghostbusters versus Taps, both have sort of signature logos or maybe not an outfit, but like similar clothing that they wear all the time, They have the signature vehicle, they have the gadgets, they have sort of that working class mentality, that blue collar kind of approach and jokey kind of relatable feeling, and I say that with all great respect to Jason and Grant and the guys at Taps. Like, they really, whether they intended to or not, created a real life version of Ghostbusters. I think that was something that a lot of us attached to when they first came out. And then you had the other shows that came along and did something completely different. You know, Paranormal State came along and said, okay, well, let's do it in college. And then, you know, Zach and his crew of Ghost Adventures are sort of like the A-team of the paranormal, that it's like explosive and it's like it's action-packed, you know? So, so that's one part of it. But I also think when you look at 2004, when ghost hunters first arrived on the scene, something else was happening. Over on the Internet, we saw a little bit before, I think 2003 was the launch of MySpace, and then Facebook came shortly after. We had the arrival of social media and in this very rich way, and suddenly people, you know, are taking to these social media platforms and saying, like, hey, I'm interested in this stuff. I'm interested in it. And they don't have to worry about getting weird looks from their PTA members or their homeowners association or their neighbors or whatever. They can go online and talk to the people the next town over and say, I'm really into Bigfoot. Anyone else? And then you can find someone else that's, like, into Bigfoot. So it kind of broke down those barriers. So I think, like, the arrival of the investigative TV show in this current form, along with the arrival of social media, created this big boom that allowed everybody to come out of the paranormal closet. And I check on this periodically. It may be a little messed up right now during an election cycle, but for a while I would go on to meetup.org, which is like a social media site for you to create real-world social groups. And for a while, groups that labeled themselves as paranormal, the amount of groups fit snugly right between the amount of groups that labeled themselves as Republican and the amount of groups that labeled themselves as Democrat. So you had basically, you know, a very similar amount of number of people that were interested in the paranormal as were interested in creating groups dedicated to our two major political parties. So, you know, that online component really, you know, changed things up a lot.
Okay, so let's get into your new show, Paranormal Paparazzi. How did this all start, and how did the name come about?
Well, simply enough, the name came about because we needed a name. Like, you know, it was alliteration works, and you know, we were just throwing a lot of names back and forth off the wall. But I've really come to like the name because, you know, the idea of the paparazzi, like, sometimes has a negative connotation, but that's really stalker-razzi is when you're talking about. Paparazzi is like persistent, like reporters that are going after the story. And as someone that operates within the entertainment journalism field, you know, paparazzi, a lot of times they work with the celebrities. It's like, you know, there's this agreement of like, okay, come out and you're going to take the picture and you're going to get what you need and we'll give you some quotes, and like it's like a symbiotic relationship. So it's not to be confused with stalker-razzi, and I'm actually glad you asked that question. As far as how it came about, you know, really, I mean, I've been doing the Paranormal Pop Culture website for a while, and a couple of years ago I got to know Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures, and about a year ago now, Zach approached me, and he said, like, I know you know this stuff. Like, you know this pop culture stuff. We get along together. We work well together. And he was looking for a new project, and he's like, you know, I want to do something with this, with you, and try to make this happen. So we kind of put our heads together, and, you know, he definitely has a lot of ideas, and Zach knows the paranormal and knows his paranormal fans, and Zach also knows how to get a TV show made. And I know, you know, journalism, and I know pop culture, and I know paranormal pop culture, and I know how to tell a story. And, you know, with that, you know, we kind of came up with this idea, and then along the way, you know, it evolves by including people like Mike Maddox, who is our showrunner, who has worked at Comedy Central and Jimmy Kimmel Show, and the production people at my Tupelo, and obviously Travel Channel. So it evolves, but you know, it's just such a natural thing to have out there, because when you look at all the paranormal is a huge business, you know, like not just the investigative shows, but all the scripted stuff that's out there, it cannot be denied that it goes beyond believing or not believing. It is about telling the stories of the people within the popular culture and the people that, the celebrities and like, it's such a part of our culture right now that it has to be done. So yeah, that's sort of how it came about.
So it's almost like it was meant to be, the way that you just described it.
I mean, I like to think so. I mean, honestly, pursuing what's funny is when you talk to guys like Zach, okay, he is, he loves pop culture as well. Like, I mean, Zach is a vampire fiend. Zach knows vampires and loves vampires. And his favorite movie is Bram Stoker's Dracula, or Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. And then you have, like, reporters like Joshua P. Warren, who is a respected researcher. But, when I first started talking to Josh, we didn't talk about the paranormal. We talked about geeky things like Superman or Raiders of the Lost Ark or stuff like that. So, you see how people are sort of meant to be working together or are meant to, like we just kind of cross over so naturally. So it is a very exciting project to be like, to have fun talking about this stuff. And man, I love it. Like I absolutely love the fact that when we are in the newsroom, the Paranormal Paparazzi newsroom, we're not trying to prove or disprove. That's not our aim so much as it is to cover the zeitgeist and let the people involved have their say. And then we continue that conversation in the newsroom. We're not saying like, I agree or disagree, but we're chatting about it. And the awesome thing is, like, when the camera stops rolling, we continue having that conversation. We would go to like a bar or whatever afterwards and continue to talk about this stuff and continue to be excited about it because it's just so much fun.
Well, I mean, the show just shows the passion that you all have, you and the team. And the first thing that I noticed when I watched the series premiere of the show that it was fast-paced, very quick, but it was informative, and it leaves you with wanting more. And I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but it prompted me to research more about the Lizard Man. I think it's just a great show like this because it doesn't give you biased opinions like you were just saying, but it allows you to make up your own opinion. But in the same episode, I noticed when you brought up the story about the Bob Larson girls and whether it's just a ploy to create another set of paranormal celebrities and using the sport, quote-unquote, sport of demonology, which was the phrase that you stated as their platform. Will you show more opinion on stories and topics, or is this sort of like a one-off type of deal?
No, I certainly do. And the episode that aired just tonight, Rachel Fine, who is one of our reporters, who I absolutely love, and I really view all of our reporters as great people, even though I disagree with them and they disagree with me. But she had an experience at the Lizzie Borden house. So this was the episode that just aired tonight on the East Coast, and I said, I don't know that I believe that. Like, I wasn't there, so that's one big component. Like, it's hard to say whether you believe something or not if you're not there. But based on what I see, that's what I can go off of. I don't know that I believe that this table moved, because of a spirit moving it. I don't know that I believe that. But I believe that Rachel was there and thinks something happened and thinks she was part of an experience. But yeah, I mean, I'm constantly questioning things. And you know what? Like, I am the biggest, I question myself more than anyone else. Like, I mean, if something is to happen to me, I question it constantly, and then even years later will continue to question it. That doesn't mean that I remove the possibility of believing, but I'm always constantly trying to find a explanation behind something. So yeah, I mean,
right.
Obviously with editing, you lose some things, and we do fit a lot of content in an episode, and that is intentional. We want to give you like a taste. We want to have a quick conversation about these things, sort of like, hey, did you hear? Like, this is a crazy story. So there's always more to be said, and there is some stuff that is left on the cutting room floor, as you guys know. But yeah, I question everything.
Okay. So speaking of questioning things and not totally believing everything, to add to that premiere episode on the Teen Exorcism Squad, a question that I had was Scott Grunwald really possessed, or was that staged for dramatic purposes?
I can honestly say that it was not staged, as far as I know. And I don't think it was.
Okay.
Now, was he possessed? Well, that's a question that I cannot answer. I don't know. I mean, I personally, I've never been possessed, to my knowledge, so I honestly, I still wonder, what was happening there as well. Like, he said something happened, and I believe him. Like, I trust Scott. So if he said that he was feeling weird or whatever, I believe he was feeling weird. Does that translate into some sort of possession? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Is it possible that, you get so caught up in that moment and you get so caught up in thinking about something happening that you create it? Sure, I think that's possible. Is that what happened? Again, I don't know. So there is this level of, I guess that's what people have to decide for themselves, because I try to ask the questions, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it as well. So I think at the end of the day, I think we try to give a voice to the viewers, and we try to ask some of the questions the viewers might ask, and then they can kind of decide whether they think it's so fake or so weird or so true or whatever. But so I don't know. I do think that I was raised Catholic, and I still, I am still like part of that culture. I still very much have a lot of that inside me, and I know that growing up, my mom would tell me don't mess around with that stuff. Not even if you're playing around, because even if you're not meaning to do anything, you could get yourself in a load of trouble. So I think that it's incredibly tricky for these young girls to be toying around with that world. I worry about what happens, even if they're attempting to do it seriously, and they are trying to do it seriously, but I worry about that. And I think that's why Bishop Long was such a great interview on that show, too, because he pretty much said, hey, be careful, because you're playing with fire. But with that said, I'm not, those girls, I wish them all the best. I would not let my daughter become an exorcist. I don't have a daughter, but, I would not pursue that path with her.
Okay. Fair enough. So what do you find challenging while doing the show? I mean, what is it that you find more difficult, like finding the current paranormal news to check out, or having your witnesses or your interviewees to be forthcoming with the answers?
Well, I would say that, the thing I think is most challenging with the show is, something that I can sit around and talk about all day long is a different story when their camera's on you. That is a weird thing. So I would say that is the challenging thing. But that aside, as far as the technical aspects of it, finding the stories is not difficult, actually. The way we approach things is we either tell a completely new story or we add something new to a familiar story. And you throw a stone or, just hit a random, just randomly, go on Google or whatever, and you're going to find a paranormal story. And it may be a story that was just kind of glanced over by the local news, and yet we think, well, there's more there. There's more there to pursue. So finding the story is not difficult. Finding the eyewitnesses typically is not difficult. Sometimes getting them to talk is a challenge, but the bigger challenge is getting them to talk and not just going for the people that are trying to sell a book or whatever. That is a challenge because, a lot of people are trying to get on TV, and a lot of people are trying to get a book deal or, kind of go for that contract or whatever that's going to lead to some sort of business opportunity for them. So we try to be, we try to make certain that we're not just putting people on TV that's trying to sell a book, So that's one thing. And in last week's episode, we talked to the family of supposed alien abductees, and I don't necessarily disbelieve their story, but like I said on air, is this too Hollywood ready? Is this too ready-made for a movie? So I asked that question. That doesn't mean it's not true. It just means we always have to be asking these questions. So that is a bit of a challenge. But no, I mean, the stories, the eyewitnesses, they are all there. And, for the most part, you can get them, you can get people to talk. That's one good thing about what I do as a journalist is I typically am able to get people to talk.
Well, Aaron, how do you get the information or the stories for the show? Do you physically do that, or is there a separate team that does that?
No, I mean, I was very much involved with that. It was not just me. We had a great group of producers. We had Mike Maddox, as I said, was showrunner, and KP, and we had a lot of people that were digging up stories while we're putting together the show. But and I would pass along a lot of links, and I would also pass along a lot of here's how we can find some stories. I would do that. So it was. I mean, it's research. It's like about digging around and seeing what you can find. But then there's the stuff that just sort of drops in your lap. If Adele is saying that her house is haunted, or if she tweets something like that, then that's the kind of thing that catches fire, pretty quickly. I mean, just a couple days ago, Kesha, the pop star, said that on her new album, she writes about an experience of having sex with a ghost. Well, there you go. That's right away. That's a Paranormal Paparazzi type of story. And
right.
And what's interesting is that with that, there's a track record with that. I mean, Kesha has gone on record before, and I put that up on my site the other day, some of the other times that she's talked extensively about ghosts and her fascination with it. So, a lot of times entertainment sites grasp onto that headline and run with it, but then they kind of miss some of the other depth or history to it, and we try to add, some of that other context to it.
Right. Now, you've called yourself the skeptic in chief, which I love that title. Are you truly a skeptic of the paranormal, or are you somewhat of a believer? I mean, you've been in this field for so long, and you've gone on investigations. Do you consider yourself a skeptic or somewhat of a believer?
I guess, I mean, the way I interpret skeptic, okay, there's sort of the popular connotation and then the actual definition. So the way I look at it is trying to be open to new experiences, but also not having all of the data to be able to make a judgment, or not having all the data to be convinced of something's authenticity. So in that way, I am very much a skeptic. Now, I personally do think that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. How about that? I think that there are things out there that we cannot yet explain that do play into something bigger. So I guess skeptical believer would be also appropriate for me. But I honestly don't want to put myself in a position where I'm the guy that's saying, yep, that's real, that's real, that's real, that's real, or the guy that says that's fake, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake. I mean, for me, the most important thing is, because we're not an investigative show. We try to have investigative reporters, but we're not a ghost hunting show.
Right.
Ghost Adventures does that so well. Ghost Hunters does that well. We're not trying to be them. We're trying to tell the stories. We're trying to say, like, okay, this thing happened. This person wants to talk about it. We'll send a reporter out there, and if you have a method of trying to investigate that you want us to see, we'll send them along with that too. But at the end of the day, it's not about us defining this as real or not. And I think that is actually the first time you're really seeing, us kind of a show that's trying to present the story without saying, yeah, this is fact or faked. We're not trying to do that.
Right.
Although I also enjoy fact or faked. That's the other thing. Is after working with all these shows and getting to know all these people, I love the shows. I still tune in. Like, I think sometimes we can be very ridiculous in this genre, but I still love it. Like, and I have a lot of friends that are involved in this. So it's like, I don't want to try to be Ben Hansen, because Ben Hansen does a good job of what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Aaron, I want to know more about your amazing team. Now, you have casted a great team of reporters: Joshua, Warren, Scott, Sona, Brandon, and Julie. And just be honest, we won't tell anyone. Which one is your favorite reporter?
Oh, that's like picking, my favorite kind of food. I like it all. I legitimately will say that everybody that is on the team really does bring something different, which is why I like each of them, differently. Like, I'm not just lining up and saying who's the best ghost hunter. Like, that would be boring. But Rachel Fine and I, a lot of times it seems like she's going to say something that I'm going to say. Like, sometimes I will look to her and, just know that she's going to roll with something because I don't have to say it, because I know that she's on top of it, So she and I, she and I have that kind of connection, and she's awesome because she's, good at gathering a story, and is fascinated and excited about the paranormal, but is not approaching this as a paranormal investigator. Julie Alexandria, I think, is such a great and wry skeptic, and she cracks me up, and she has a lot of experience of interviewing people and kind of like, and doing it in such a smart-ass way too, which I like. Pardon my language. And Brandon is like the Energizer Bunny. Like, he's new to reporting, and he is new to the paranormal, but he has such passion and excitement, and is just so excited to go out there and do it that it's infectious. And then, like, Scott Grunwald is like the wild man reporter, and he's a longtime ghost hunter, but he's still, and yet he has this knack for making people love him and wanting to tell him their story. And Joshua says crazy things that make me crack up, and I give this look to Josh, and I'm like, really? Did you just really go there? But I swear, like, Joshua and I, just all day long, I think we could bust each other's chops, and I will give him a look when he launches into a long story. I'm going to give him that look, but at the end of the day, I will be happier for the fact that he told that story. And then, and Sona, like, I love her. I think the only challenge is that, sadly, she's not in the newsroom, so we pretty much keep her on the West Coast. And, I know her the least, and yet I like her excitement, and I like her kind of willingness to tackle this whole Hollywood scene, which she's been doing so nicely. So I know it's such a dodge to not pick a favorite, but it is such a diverse group that we could not do what we're doing if it was just a bunch of straight-out believers or straight-out, like, non-believers or whatever. Like, so we've got a good mix.
Well, Aaron, I know that you've got a busy schedule, and we're on a little time constraint here. So I just have one more question, and I know Lucy has one more question. So what can we expect from your upcoming shows? Are there any really amazing stories that you can give us a little hint about?
Honestly, I have to. I've watched all these episodes several times, so I need to kind of refresh myself on what's next. But did you see the episode that just aired tonight? Has that aired for you yet?
I did not get a chance to. No, not yet.
That one I like for the stories because we tackle these naked ghost hunters. We go. We have a supposedly UFO story. We go to the Lizzie Borden house. It's sort of like we have this nice mix of everything. We have an apocalyptic story, and the stories that came out of this week's episodes I'm really fond of. But each week there really is just a whole new level of excitement. And what's great is we're not we're covering all elements of the paranormal and supernatural and horror. Since I'm a fan of horror movies and Zach is a fan of horror, we have that strong element, and we also have the Dread Central report, which is based off of the dreadcentral.com horror website. Mm-hmm. And so we'll go to conventions and interview those celebrities. So aside from that, you can expect more people to take off their shirt and run in the water, one of our reporters disrobed tonight. We tend to get into all sorts of crazy adventures, and I like that. So there's certainly more of that to come.
Okay. Well, you know what, Aaron, I know you can't stand too long. You've got to run. But I truly want to thank you for coming on tonight. So can you let our listeners know where they can go to learn more about your projects and where they can possibly see you next?
Yes, certainly. And before I go, let me say that it's been a pleasure being on, and I really appreciate your guys' question. It's very insightful, and I've had a really nice time talking with you. But aside from that, I encourage everyone, to check out additional scenes from Paranormal Paparazzi and kind of see some sneak pictures and everything. You can go onto the Travel Channel website. But in addition to that, I encourage everyone to keep up on paranormalpopculture.com, where one of the nice things about being one of the co-executive producers of the show is that I'm able to put pictures out there and talk about the show quite a bit. So I'm always kind of teasing out some information about the show on there, as well as doing a lot of celebrity interviews and feature stories about the entertainment of the unexplained. So please go to paranormalpopculture.com, and I'm always also looking for new writers and people that are aspiring to be journalists, so reach out to me through there if you're interested in that. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm kind of a Twitter addict, just at Aaron Sagers, first, last name, and communicate with me there. And where will I be next? Well, actually, this week is New York Comic Con in Manhattan, where I live, and I'll be speaking about zombies on Friday afternoon. The title of the panel is Headlines of the Dead, and it kind of talks about zombies in the media, and I would encourage people to, if you show up and you tell me that, you heard me on this show, I'll give you something at the panel. I don't know what yet, probably like a little poster or something, but just tell me you heard on the show, and I'll throw something up for you. And then I'll be at Spooky Empire, which is a horror convention in Orlando, Florida, on, I believe it is October 25th through the 28th. So with that said, those are all the many ways you can see me and reach out to me, and tune into Paranormal Paparazzi Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern and Pacific on the Travel Channel. And, and hopefully you guys like what you see.
Erin, thank you again. It has been such a pleasure to have you on tonight. We wish you the greatest success with the show, and we definitely want to have you back on. And we need to get into that zombie addiction because you and Anthony have something in common, a love for all things dead and walking. So seriously, we'd love to have you back on when Season 2 begins, so be on the lookout for an email from us, okay? Thank you.
Anytime, and thank you again so much. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks, Erin. Have a great weekend.
You too. Good night.
Good night.
Take care. Good night. Well, that was great.
That was cool.
Aaron is such a great guy. I mean, you know, Lucy, we've been around him more than a couple of times. I mean, when we were investigating, what did you think about him when we went to the Stanley Hotel and we were at Eastern State Penitentiary? What were your sort of first thoughts when you met him?
You know what? At Eastern State, I didn't get a chance to investigate with him that closely, but at the Stanley, actually, when we were down in the tunnel that's in the basement, Aaron was actually down there with us when we were doing an EVP session. Right. And you know what? At that point, he struck me as kind of quiet. But then again, watching this, he really was. He was very quiet, and but he was like into it. He was totally into it. And watching the show, it just gives you a whole different perspective. He's really cool. I mean, he doesn't come across like some other people that are, can I say, para-celebrities. I mean, he's really cool. Yeah.
Right.
I didn't want to go there, but yeah. No, he really is. And you truly can see that interest in the paranormal. You know how he talked about like the horror movies and stuff like that, and that's true. How many of us grew up watching these things? Wolfman, The Mummy, and a lot of those movies really have shaped our perception of what we're doing now. I mean, Ghostbusters, oh my God, you know, that's so cool. I mean, when you first saw the movie, did you honestly think that someday we'd be running around investigating the paranormal ourselves?
I mean, it was when he was describing that, it was kind of funny, and I wish we had more time with him, but he is running a crazy schedule, and he only gave us a small amount of time. We had so many questions that we wanted to ask him, and actually, as he was answering some of them, I wanted follow-up questions, sort of like, because I wasn't getting the essence of his answer about when he was explaining about pop culture and the paranormal. I really wasn't getting it from him. Maybe I wasn't understanding properly, but I wanted some follow-up questions about that. But it was kind of funny when he was explaining the whole Ghostbusters thing, and I wanted to ask him, was that a subconscious thing that, Taps and Ghost Hunters basically mirrored the Ghostbusters movie series? I mean, you don't think about it, and it wasn't until he was just saying it that, they had a van, they had the black van, and, the hearse from Ghostbusters. They've got the T-shirts and the gear, and so it's almost similar to the uniforms and the gadgets that they had in the movies. It's just eerie and weird, and you're not sure if it was done on a producer level, if it was sort of man-made from television, and that's why they did it, because it was so familiar, or did it just spring that way, and it just sprung up that, team members wore those shirts, and they all drove in one car, and it was, had that decal on the side of it. But that was pretty funny, and I wanted to get into that a little bit more with him, but maybe next time.
Well, Scooby-Doo has a van, too.
True. The mystery machine.
But no, I mean, there's a lot of things that he touched on, and like I said, hopefully he'll come back when Season 2 starts and be able to spend some more time, because you're right, there are so many other questions that came about with the questions that he was talking about. I really, really enjoy the format of the show. I mean, at first I thought, okay, it's going to be like TMZ, they're sitting around, but it truly is. It's cool enough, and like you mentioned, it only gives you just that little taste, and it pushes you to search for more, and I think that's great. I mean, seriously, where can you go to grab all this stuff? I mean, you can go online. There's 1,000,001 websites, but I think as society is, I think the way our culture is now, we're so ingrained to having something splashed on TV where it's easy and convenient. This is it really is its time. It's perfect. It's there. It's short stories. They're not going deeply into it. They're just giving you a little bit. They're just touching the surface, and it's totally up to the viewer whether or not, hey, that's something I want to look into.
Well, here's my critique, and I have sort of a good and bad, but the bad is not really bad. Like I said before, and I said it to you, Lucy, before, that I love that it is fast-paced. I think we're in an era right now that I don't want to relate this to you, Lucy, but, we're in ADD heaven. There's a lot of people out there that have these attention deficit disorders that, either clinically or not. No, either clinically or not, but, people lose interest very quickly. And especially now in this day and age of technology, while everybody's on or everybody is watching television, they're not just sitting there watching television. They're on their laptops or on their BlackBerries or their iPhones or whatever. And so you have to grab their attention very quickly for a short period of time. And I think Aaron does a really good job. His show, Paranormal Paparazzi, does a good job at doing that. It's none of the, the melodic music and the long intros and the, from day one, this is the, it doesn't do all of that. It really gets into the meat of it, gives you the story, and sort of has a commentary about it, because he does ask the investigative reporters what they thought, or do they really think it was happening or real or fake or whatever it was. And then they move on to the next one. And so it prompted me, and this is what I like, it sort of prompted me to research. So if I liked a story, like I mentioned before, The Lizard Man, I went online and I looked it up, and I read on my own and was able to formulate my own opinion about it. He didn't sort of throw that biased opinion or his feelings, and none of the reporters did that. And that's what I liked. The thing that I think that may be bad about the show is that if and I'm only sort of relating it to what TMZ does, and they have a daily show, and I'm pretty sure that TMZ records the day of that the show airs, or maybe the day before. And again, I didn't ask this question of Aaron, and I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he may have done already the 8 episodes for the season, and maybe it's just because it's the first series, the first premiere series on Travel Channel, and that's why they may have done all of them. But I think maybe some of the shows that they may have recorded already, the story may change within the time that it actually airs. And so, that may be a hindrance. I don't know. It all depends on the stories. And I'm sure that with editing, if that ever happens, I'm sure Travel Channel and the producers can change it out, swap it out, maybe completely delete it off and put another story in its place. So you don't get something that's sort of after the fact. But I think that may be the problem. I would love it if it was sort of like a TMZ, where he and his team would be recording, maybe the day before, so that you have the absolute current piece of paranormal, pop culture, stories, news, rumors, whatever it may be, and that way, like what he was just talking about, Kesha, that would have been a great story tonight. But I guess because everything has been allotted already for the dates, that the producers and the channel could not get that to be done. I know that's just my opinion. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but that's what I think. And I mean, that's in a perfect world. I would love to have a show like that.
Well, honestly, going back to my ADD, I like it. It's perfect for me. It's not too long. It keeps my attention, and it goes from one story to the other. And again, like I said, there's not too many places where you can get all of this at once. And it's just great. And how many times have I said it before? As far as Aaron was talking about, like how the shows and movies influence pop culture or influence our cultures. I wouldn't be paranormal investigating if it wasn't for Ghost Adventures, if it wasn't walking past that television that night and never hearing about the story, never really thinking about investigating. I sat down and I watched it, and because of this reality show, just opened up a whole world for me. So each one of these little stories could have the same effect on somebody else. Maybe someone all of a sudden wants to get into cryptozoology or God forbid, they want to become an exorcist. And I really appreciate the fact that Aaron was honest when he answered, my question about Scott, because my thought when I saw that segment was, okay, come on, is this for real? But
really, I know, seriously.
I mean, when you look at it, you're like, okay, wait a minute, this is just too convenient. All of a sudden he starts feeling weird. But I truly do appreciate Aaron's answer to the question. I mean, he didn't dance around it. He says he doesn't know. And that's refreshing. It's, to have someone tell the truth about something. He doesn't know. So
and we know,
I'm looking forward to good stuff.
We know Scott Grunwald. He's a name within the paranormal, and he's a jokester. He loves to joke around. And so when I saw that episode, I thought he was joking, and there was no comment afterwards about it. Like he was joking. He clearly said, something happened. He blacked out, and he didn't know what was going on. So it was kind of weird for him to do that. I seriously thought he was joking.
Yeah, no, I thought it was cool. So, personally, I think the show's cool. I like it. I can't wait to see tonight's episode. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see it, but I'm looking forward to the show being around for a while. I really hope it does, and I'd be very curious to see what our listeners think about it.
Yeah, I think with everything, I love to give its due run. Sort of let it run its course. You shouldn't make a judgment basically off of the first two shows, although you do get a sense, an idea of how the show and the concept is and what it's all about. And if you don't like the concept itself, like the fast-paced journalistic type of reporting that the show does, then you're not going to like the actual show itself. If you're going to comment about how they do it and who they talk to and what stories, that's another thing. And so you should let it run its course. What was it, 6 months ago, I was so excited about Haunted Highway with Jack Osborne, and I was saying how this would be really cool. And I thought after the first episode, it actually was pretty cool. And then, after the second, third, and fourth episode, I lost interest completely because it just did not, it just didn't gel with me. I'm sure there are people out there that did like it, but it wasn't, the concept itself wasn't for me. I thought they would change it up a bit, but it seemed too much cookie cutter to me, and I couldn't get used to it. It just didn't gel with me at all. But, this show, Paranormal Paparazzi, I'm really kind of liking, and I think what is good about it is that each episode has all these different stories, and so if you don't like one, he's probably got about 4 or 5 other ones within that half hour that you may like, and so I think it's really cool. I just say give it a shot, give it a try. What can it hurt? If it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. But I know Aaron is a great guy. He's very truthful, very down-to-earth, very, very funny. He's the most hilarious guy that you're going to ever meet, very witty, too. I suggest you follow him on Twitter if you haven't, because he has these one-liners and zingers that will make you pee your pants. But
well,
all right, that's all I have to say. Go ahead, Lucy.
I just got one thing to add. Like if our listeners out there, if you ever get a chance to go to either an event or to meet Aaron, please do. I mean, like Anthony said, he's honest, he's witty, he's funny. He's very, very funny. If you've got the opportunity to show up at an event where he's at, go. You'll enjoy yourself. I guarantee you.
He mentioned that he's going to be at New York Comic-Con, so if anybody's in New York, I think it's in, what is it, next week I think it is, or the week after, go to it, and you'll have the time of your life.
Well, Comic-Con's always fun anyway, so. But speaking of people who were on the show, you want to go there?
Yeah. Yes, let's go there. I mentioned in chat before the show started to Mateo as we were talking and getting ready to go on air, and we have sort of promoted that we were going to have a surprise guest tonight. And we did up until about maybe 30 minutes prior to the show starting. And it wasn't because the guest backed out. It was because I'll admit, I told the guests that we will not have him on. And the reason why I said that is because I believe that our show, Lucy and my show, Paranormal Review Radio, has integrity. And, we speak the truth. We don't, we may sugarcoat things sometimes, because we're fawning over a guest because we love them so much, and we know our listeners love them so much. But, and so, we may be extra nice and extra specially nice and courteous and so on and so forth to certain guests, and others, we are pleasant, I think. I don't think we've come off bad. I don't think we've ever done an interview, except for one who I will not name, where we had a horrible evening with, but and that was rightfully so. But I don't think that we are horrible hosts. I don't believe that we breed this sort of biased, skeptical, whatever. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I don't like when we request to have, or that we are asked to have someone on the show, and they begin to question what we do and how we do it, and then when they are presented with, basically, after they have requested how we do our show and what we will say, and they then return back and say, no, this is how we want you to say it, and this is how it will be said, basically telling me how to do our show, or telling us how to do our show. I don't tolerate guests or even people in my everyday life like that. I don't like someone telling me what to do or how to do it or how to say it when I know that I am doing great radio, and I know Lucy is putting every heart and soul into the research, into the questions, and into just the conveyance of her questions while on the air with a guest. I think that to then turn around and then concede to someone saying, this is how I'd like you to do it, use this word and not that word, I think is horrible. I don't respect a person like that. Now, to give you a little bit more insight, we wanted to, because we only had a certain amount of time with Aaron tonight, we figured why not have someone who has been on his show, who they did a story on, to discuss it sort of further, discuss the story itself, what the news reporting was, the story, the person, and then talk about how they felt while they were being reported on Paranormal Paparazzi, how did that all go, and, what was the process and all this stuff. We thought it would be fun to do that because, again, we had a limited amount of time with Aaron. And the person who we had contacted to get on was Tom Reed, who actually Aaron mentioned a little bit about him, didn't mention his name, but it mentioned about what he said was the abduction, the alien abduction case, which was on the first night, which was September 28th, but I think it was because they do two 30-minute episodes. I think this story was in the second 30-minute episode, if I'm correct, right, Lucy?
Yes, it was.
And, okay, so it was about an alien abduction case, and it was supposed to be, or it is supposed to be, sort of like the holy grail of alien abduction cases. This guy's story is supposed to blow everything out of the water, and his story is labeled right now as a close encounter of the fourth kind, and he has said that he has evidence, and he actually, I think, Lucy, I didn't get a chance to look at what he had emailed us, but was that evidence or was that paperwork? I don't know what he actually did send.
What he had sent us was a whole bunch of there were some letters from different there was actually letters from different agencies that had talked about the research and what they had gone through, and it was a lot of I think how do I say it? Substantiation of his story.
Of his claims, right.
Yes. And the one thing is that we never ever had any doubts about the story, we asked him in good faith that because, we thought it was interesting, we wanted to hear more about it. And when he first agreed, he sent us all of this information. And, out of respect, I did go back and I did tell him that we've only got a certain amount of time, that we just basically wanted to get like maybe a brief overview, talk about his experience, and that maybe on a future show we could go into it in more detail, and left it at that. And
I figured it would be a great segue to have him on because he was on Paranormal Paparazzi, and it was just a little spoiler, sort of like doing what Aaron does on his show, giving a little quick story about it, and it probably would have been similar to it, very generic, and we have them. We have the questions right in front of us. They were very generic questions, and it was formulated in a way for him to come and explain it. We weren't going to put any words in his mouth. We weren't going to convey whether or not we believed it or not, or whether he was telling the truth or not, or if anybody else should believe it or not. It was none of that. It was basically getting the information out. And last night, Lucy had reached out to him to ask him if he could call into the show because normally what we do for the show is if we're having a guest, us, we have a guest for almost the entire show. And it's usually about an hour and a half we have this interview. And what we do normally is we call them. I like to do that about 5 minutes before the show. We call them, get them in queue, and Lucy puts them on hold, and we go right into the show once it starts, the intro, and Lucy pulls the guest in. Sometimes they'll call us before the show, which Aaron did tonight. He called us. And that's how we do it. When you have a guest in the middle of the show, I hate, and I've heard this before, when not only on Blog Talk, but when hosts of radio shows have guests on, they call during the middle of it, and you hear the dialing, and I just don't like that. I don't think Lucy likes that either.
No.
It sounds funny to me, and it doesn't it doesn't sound professional. Even though we may not be the professional radio hosts in the world, I at least like to try and pretend to be and try to act that way because we love you guys as listeners and fans, and we want to give you the best. And so I know you don't want to hear dialing in the middle of everything. And so,
Anthony, can I just say something? I mean, what we want to do is just make it as pleasant to the listener as possible. And I know it's just distracting to hear the phone ringing and which is the main reason why we don't do it. It's the main reason why we don't do music and we don't do like canned laughter or anything like that. We want to have our guests be the one. We want our guests to be the show, and that's why we usually have one guest. So the situation tonight was a little different. As a rule, we don't usually like to have more than one guest. So for time-wise, we were simply trying to make everything fit. And
that's why you had asked him last night if he could call in just so that it would be easier. So if we saw his phone number pop up, you would, be able to pull him in, and I can see him there, and then I'd be able to go right into the intro, and then you pull him right onto the show, and it would be, easy peasy, very cool and smooth, and no hiccups. And when Lucy did that, he responded and wanted to know how we were going to introduce him. And he wanted to talk to us today. Now, Lucy and I have full-time jobs. We don't have, we do this every week, once a week, because it's our passion and because we love to do this. And we love to talk to you guys. And so that's why we do it. But we also have day jobs. And so we don't have certain times during the week, I know especially for me because of my weird, strange hours, I'm not able to do a lot of that, connection or that communication, and mostly it's done via email. Whenever we do anything, it's usually on the weekends, and that's when we call our guests and, the talent and celebrities that we deal with, that we usually try to wait till the weekend if we can. So when Lucy sent that email last night, he wanted to talk to us, and he wanted to know what the intro was. And so during the middle of the day today, I actually had 5 minutes to breathe. I went out to the email, and I then forwarded to him the actual intro. And I figured, you know what, he wants to see it. He wants to be, calm down, I guess. Maybe he was feeling a little anxiety as to it. I don't know. So I figured, let me just send him the intro and let him read it, and he'll be fine. Well, what he proceeded then to send me was comments basically on what issues he's had in the past with interviews, which makes me wonder. And number two, how he basically wanted me to talk about, and I still don't even understand this, why he wanted me to talk about the UN, because his story was brought to the United Nations, but then made another comment which never made sense to me at all, and I won't even repeat it because it just doesn't make sense. But then what he did was then take my paragraph and almost like a copy editor decided to start to cross out words and change words. I mean, not even that I was telling the wrong story. It was the way that I used the words, and he wanted to change this word from this to that. Very simple and ridiculous to me. And so when I saw that today, maybe I was a little angry because I was crazy at work today. I just got ticked off, and I said, you know what? If he's going to come around right now before the even interview starts and change our words around and say, this is how I want you to say it, well, then, you know what? I don't want you on the show. The radio show is the platform for you to come on and discuss. And if you didn't like anything that I had said, then that's your opportunity then to say, you know what, I have to correct you on that. This is how I like to say it, or this is what really happened, or, so on and so forth. That's what radio was for. And so if he was already going to do that beforehand, I spoke to Lucy before, after I read it, and we discussed it, and we both agreed that, okay, we weren't going to have him on the show, because who knows what would happen while we were on the interview. And who knows how he could have been twisting things around our words after the fact. And so we just made an executive decision not to have him on the show.
It was just, when I saw what he did, it was just, no. He literally went through and corrected words, and it just, we've never had anyone do that. And in fact, as a rule, we've never had anyone ever ask for our intro. So I just thought that it was a little unusual.
Right. We've sent it, Lucy, in the past, we've sent guests, they want to know sort of an idea of what you're going to ask. And so we've sent sort of sample questions just so they know the direction that you want to go in and the fields that you want to talk about, which is completely understandable. I would want that. If I'm going on a radio show to be interviewed, I'd want to know what sort of areas do they want to know about so that I can sort of prepare myself and maybe even educate myself more about something so that I can give back to the listeners that are listening on that particular show. But to not even care about that and just ask for the intro, which is basically saying, and you guys know my intro that I say all the time. It's basically, this is what they've done. This is the book that they've written, or this is the show that they've been in. And they're a little bit of a brief history, and that's it. We get into the show. I don't do anything else. I don't say anything else.
Well, we've always, and the one thing that we always do is we always ask someone, is there anything that's off limits?
Right.
We always put that out there ahead of time. If there's something that you don't want to discuss or you want to avoid it completely, we respect that. So to have someone come and say, no, this is how you're going to do it, was totally, I think, inappropriate, and I think it was totally unnecessary. So as far as not having him on the show, it was never a question. Never a question. He was just not going to be there.
I think his story, it was amazing. I mean, I'm blown away about it, I would love to talk to him because, me, I'm big on UFOs. And, I haven't heard a real, what could possibly be a legitimate, abduction story, which everybody is calling abduction. And that's one of the words that he wanted to change. He didn't want me to call it abduction. He wanted me to call it encounter. What's the difference? I have no clue. But his story was so unique, and he is supposedly, from even watching just on Paranormal Paparazzi, he's got amazing evidence that can prove it. And it has been presented to many high levels, even within MUFON, and like I was saying before, United Nations. I mean, his story has gone to the highest levels I think, and there could be something there. And I don't think there's a book written about him yet, or he hasn't written a book yet, and that was actually one of the questions that we wanted to ask him. But, this could be something, and I would have loved to have him on. But I just felt, I don't think, after someone does that to you, you just feel disrespected, and I don't like to feel that way.
Well, I think it's a shame because, like you said, I think the story is amazing. I really wish that we could have talked to him. I think our listeners would have appreciated hearing that story. Like you said, MUFON considers this probably one of the most documented encounters that there is, and I really do think it's a shame. I think the story is totally fascinating, and I think it would have made a very interesting interview. But unfortunately, I don't think that we have to compromise what we do in order to have someone on the show, and
right.
We refuse to do it, and it's just not going to happen.
And Mary and Sharon are talking about the difference between an encounter and abduction in the chat room. And you know what? Even if I did say abduction and he didn't agree, I wouldn't have minded at all if he turned and said, Anthony, you know what? I'd like, it's actually encounter, not abduction. You know what? I probably would have asked him, can you explain the difference? Can you explain why do you call it encounter and others call it abduction? Or what is the difference? Because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And so that would have been a legitimate discussion that we would have had on the air. But, for someone to tell me that I want you to say it's an encounter, I don't agree with. I want to say abduction. I believe it was an abduction. Abduction means, for layman's terms, kidnapped. You're taken. And so, you were taken. You and your family were taken. Encounter just means that you've come across something. To me, you've come across an experience, whatever it may be. I think there is a difference. I could be wrong. But I would have loved to have had that discussion with him. And I wouldn't have debated him. I would have just, conceded and said, okay, you had an encounter. But, coming beforehand and not even having the actual interview yet or discussion about it, it just ticked me off. So, I don't know, Lucy, do you want to rant more about this?
No, I think we've ranted enough. Like I said, it's a shame. It would have been a great interview, but unfortunately, he wasn't on the same page that we were, and that's fine. He could have come on air, and if he didn't like the way we put things, anyone is welcome to come on the show. And while we're interviewing, if we state something incorrectly or in a manner that they don't want, we encourage people to speak up. I mean, that's what this whole show is about. This show is about the truth. I mean, we're not going to change things. We're not going to change people's words. We want to hear what the people we interview say. And far be it from us to come on and say, oh, no, this is what. I don't think we've ever done that, and I don't think we're ever going to do that. And just as we were going to give him a chance, I think he needed to give us a chance, and he didn't. So
it just seemed as though he was trying to calculate. Maybe that's a harsh word, but it seemed as though he wanted to sort of calculate and direct the interview, and just by that sort of leaves doubt in my mind about the validity of his story. If you've got nothing to hide, and you're not so, and he gave another reason as to say that he's been on other interviews and where they've gone horribly wrong, and I get that. Horribly wrong, I don't know. I haven't listened to any or seen any of the other interviews that he's been on. What does he consider horribly wrong? Was it because he wasn't getting his story out? Was the host bad? Were they getting the facts wrong? Was he constantly correcting? I don't know what that issue was. But he didn't ask us what questions we were going to ask. He did give us information as to what his information or his story was all about, but just to change the intro. I don't know. I just keep going back to that. That bothers me. An intro is nothing. I would have respected him if he asked for the questions and I gave him the questions and he said, no, can you ask me about this? Can you talk about that? I would have said, perfectly fine, I will do that. It's just, and it's very weird. It's this intro whole thing, this intro gate, like Watergate. That just bothers me that he wanted to change that, because the intro is our opinions. You know, and this is something that you were going to discuss. This is your intro. This is the first time you were going to intro, Lucy.
Mhm.
Besides me not being on the show last week, this is going to be your first sort of intro to him. So he took that away from you, Lucy. You should be pissed off.
Oh, I'm pissed. Trust me.
There you go. There you go.
But, no, I mean, it's over and done. It's water under the bridge, and like I said, there are other people that we can interview, and there's other people that we'd love to have on the show. And, again, nothing against Tom personally. We wanted to hear his story. People wanted to hear this story. But, unfortunately, you know, it's just something unfortunate that happened. And, you know, guys, we're sorry. You know, we did try, and we were going to give him an open forum, you know, and basically the whole thing was, it was just a time frame. And again, another reason why we don't usually have more than one guest per show. We want to give our guests every opportunity to get their story across, to get their opinions across, and to have people listen to what they say. That's what this show is about. It's not about us. This show is about our guests, and it's about the listeners.
Well, we've got a ton of great shows coming up, and especially next week. I can't wait for Lucy to intro this one. But we've got a ton of great shows, and we've had to do some scrambling around for some guests that we were going to have this month, but we sort of had to move them around a little bit because of scheduling issues. And so I can't wait to get to those. But I do want to say something, Lucy, and this has nothing to do with our show, but my brother-in-law wants me to mention this. Can I mention it?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. You guys are probably going to see some pictures. I'm going to probably post them on our Facebook page. But tomorrow is the official, I don't know, what do you call it, the official Halloween decorating day for my sister and my brother-in-law. And if you've seen our pictures from last year, it's pretty neurotic and crazy. And this year, it's not any better or not any worse, whatever you want to call it. We're going to go all out and crazy. So my brother-in-law wanted me to mention, he said, it would be cool if you could say that. Say that on the radio. Just tell everybody, because he just loves that. He wants the press and the newspapers to come and see and come take pictures of the house, which, by the way, they actually did one year, Lucy. I have to tell you that.
Okay.
We did have a reporter come here to the house and say that they came here for Christmas decorations, and they said next time you do anything to let us know. So I'm not sure if we're going to be calling the press for this because the pictures will be in the newspapers. But anyway, we do go all out. We do go crazy with Halloween, especially because I love Halloween. And they also do go crazy for Christmas. But tomorrow is going to be the Halloween decorating day, the official Halloween decorating day. So you're going to see some pictures on Facebook. And just to give you a hint, we're actually, well, I'm not going to give you a hint. I'll tell you what we're doing. We are going to recreate the Michael Jackson Thriller video on their front lawn. So we're going to have Michael Jackson, and he's going to be moving, and we're going to have the zombie backup dancers, and we're going to have the movie marquee. It's going to be hysterically funny. I just hope it doesn't rain tomorrow to ruin the day. But well, I'll post some pictures. I'll post some as we're doing it and we're getting it ready, so it'll be pretty cool. So I just wanted to mention that and give a little shameful plug for my brother-in-law.
No, that's wonderful. I love Rocco. I love Joe. And, again, congratulations to them. The baby is beautiful.
Thank you. All right, so who is the radio fan of the week, Lucy?
Oh, let me see. I've been thrown off here, so let me go. Oh, there they are. This week's Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week has been posting on our Facebook page and actually is really added some insight into some of the stories that we've posted and has some definite opinions about the paranormal and has been very vocal when it comes to certain things. And we think it's awesome. One thing we encourage is for our listeners, when you come to our Facebook page, please feel free to post your opinions. You know, when it comes to the paranormal, that's what we're doing this for. And this person has been absolutely wonderful. She has been posting. She has been putting comments down, and we would like to congratulate Denise Mendenhall of Fort Dodge, Iowa, as the Paranormal Radio Review Fan of the Week. Denise is the founder and the lead investigator of Paranormal Researchers of Iowa. And just a couple little likes about Denise. She likes Stevie Vai. She likes Dream Theater, Joe Satriani, Ghost Hunters, and what I think is totally cool, she likes Survivor. Anything paranormal. And, of course, she likes Paranormal Review Radio. So congratulations, Denise. Thank you so much for being a fan. Thank you for posting on the page. And thank you for sharing your opinions with us. That's what we're doing this for. And thank you very much and congratulations. Excuse me. Okay. This was a fascinating show. And I think that we can agree that Paranormal Paparazzi is great. And the feature stories really do make you think, and they make you want to research more on the subject. We did after watching it, and boy, I can't say enough about it. Aaron Biggers definitely has a hit on his hand. And we're going to be watching for more fast-paced and interesting stories. We would love to thank Aaron again for stopping by and giving us the scoop on the show. So as far as amazing stories, you know, this past weekend there was a full moon. And did you get to go out and look at the moon? Did you notice anything interesting? What if there is proof that there has been life on the moon for a very, very long time? Well, our guest next week has written a book that explores that concept. Mike Barra will be joining us to talk about his book, Ancient Aliens on the Moon. Mike is a best-selling author, a secret space program researcher, and he's been featured on the History Channel show, Ancient Aliens. Now, in his book, he explores the idea that there may have been whole civilizations that have existed on the moon and more. Will we find that the man in the moon is a reality and that he's been watching us? Join us next Friday night and find out. So, I would like to thank all of our listeners. Thank you again, guys. You guys totally rock, and we truly appreciate all of your support, and we love you. Anthony, thank you so much for another show, another great show. You are so awesome. And
crazy.
See, now I lost my place again. For everyone else, though, until next week, have a paranormal week, everybody. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio. Paranormal Review.